Today's episode is entitled the Cirklon CK Pattern Mode. I'm making this video because about a week ago I was reading the tweets and Myler Melodies posted a tweet to the internet, and he said, to approximate the experience of learning the Cirklon, try to imagine being told to draw a picture on your computer exclusively using the keyboard. And I replied to him and I said, it's not that bad. It's a bit fiddly, but it's not as bad as he was making out. And he suggested I make a video explaining how I use the Cirklon, and he sent me a lot of questions, really good ones, covering a lot of aspects of the Cirklon, which today I'm just going to focus on the CK pattern mode and the track values, because there's a lot of stuff in there he asked about and it'll take more than one video to explain. So if you're interested in the CK pattern mode, or you want to know how I program drums and synthesizer patterns on the Cirklon, then this is the video for you. I'm going to try and index all the bits so you can skip the bits you don't want. And at the very end, I'm going to ramble on a bit about sequencers in general, probably. Hope you enjoy the video. Okay, we're going to have a look at the Midi port config of the Cirklon. Hit menu, go to more. In this menu, select Midi port config. Hit this encoder. These are all the Midi out ports, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's the CV out, and USB 1 to 6, and then host. I think that's USB host. I don't use any of the USB stuff currently. But what's important is, if you're going to be recording with a master keyboard, a master MIDI keyboard going into the Cirklon, make sure that your MIDI port, the soft through, is set to edit track on each of these. So that means that your one MIDI keyboard, when you select each track that you want to record on, the MIDI from your MIDI keyboard will go to that track, because you're able to turn it off and you're able to turn it to through. So the MIDI keyboard will now only go to track 1 if it's plugged into MIDI port in 1. And there's a couple of different ways you can set this up. But if you're using one MIDI master keyboard and you want to be able to play everything the Cirklon is connected to and record notes, set all of these to edit track. And make sure they're all set. The record enable section is set to on through for all of them as well. I've also got MIDI clock going out to every port. I aren't using MIDI timecode. Who uses MIDI timecode nowadays? Nobody. Does anybody? Leave a comment if you use MIDI timecode. I want to say hello to you. And that's the MIDI port config. Everything I show you in this video will work on both the old version and the new version of the Cirklon. I've got the new version here in front of me, but the operating system for both of them is currently pretty much the same, apart from some USB stuff. And we're not going to be touching any USB stuff today. So when I program drum machines, first of all, I set them up. You only have to do this once for every drum machine that you want to sequence that you own. But I fix the rows so the Cirklon knows which note goes to which drum voice. And the way you do that is what we've... Oh, let me just show you this. First of all, we're in track mode. If we go to pattern mode, it opens up a CK pattern. It does that because I've specified that in the instrument settings. If you go down to the instrument here in track mode, hold down shift and press value twice. These are the instrument settings for the analog rhythm I have. MIDI port 4, MIDI channel 7. And down here at the bottom, default note C3 and default pattern. That is usually P3. I've changed that to CK. save. So now what that means is when I press pattern, it automatically creates a CK pattern for me. Now to fix the rows, you go into menu, and in this menu you go to add edit rows. And you'll see all the notes to the left there, and in the middle there's a label. There's no labels yet, and on the right it says fixed and it says no, so none of them are fixed yet. Now I know on the analog rhythm C0 is the bass drum, so I'm going to add BD for bass drum beside note C0, and I'm going to fix that note by pressing this encoder, and you'll see it just popped up there at the bottom, BD. So now I know that the next one, D flat 0, that's the snare drum on the analog rhythm. So we go to SD, once again, fix it. So what you would do is you go through all your voices on your drum machine and you fix them like that, and you can label them whatever you want. So currently I just have 2 labeled here, but here's one I prepared earlier. It's another instrument, the rhythm. So if we delete this and we create a new pattern, you can see on the left there, I've got all the rows, BD, SD, rimshot, clap. All the rows are set up there, ready for me to add notes to make the analog rhythm play juicy beats. I'm going to show you how I create drum patterns using the CK pattern mode on the Cirklon. Going to go to pattern here, press play. This knob, the A knob, controls the velocity of the note that I'm going to enter. So I'm putting that at 99. I'm going to put in some kicks. Change the velocity to 91. Put in 2 snares. Now I'm going to put in some closed hats. Going to move the velocity knob around while I'm doing it. There we go. So we have some closed hats. If you press the row encoder, you'll see the velocity of each individual note, and you can change that just by turning the encoder up and down. You can also push the encoder in and turn it up and down to make it go up and down a bit faster. You can also edit in the row view. You can edit the length of the note. Use that more with synths rather than drum machines. And the delay of the note. I'm just going to go back to the snare here because it's more apparent when you mess with the delay and the snare. So what the delay does is it moves the note off the grid. It makes it either early or late. So you can hear that snare is early. Now we're going to move it up. Now you can hear it's late. So now we're going to move it back. It's right on the grid now. So we've got a pattern here, a basic one. What I would normally do now is go to menu, and in this menu select copy and double. So now I've got 2 bars, bar 1 and bar 2. You go to them by moving the bar encoder. So in bar 2 I'm going to add some more. I'm going to change the pattern a bit. So now we have 2 different bars. If I was making a track, I would go to menu, copy and double again. I usually work with 8 bars in my patterns. But right now we're just going to stick with 2. So another thing you can do is if you get fed up with this pattern, or if you get fed up just with the bar, delete, hold down delete and press bar. That clears just the bar that you're viewing. So bar 1 is still there, but bar 2 is gone. So if we go to bar 1 and we hold copy and press bar, that copies bar 1 into the buffer. Move to bar 2 and hit insert, and then we can hit one of these steps. Now if I hit step 1, it'll paste it from the start. If I hit step 5, it'll paste it just from 5. I'm going to paste it from the start. So now we've got bar 1 has been copied to bar 2. So let's spice up bar 2 again. Okay. Next thing I'm going to show you is the gang button. What the gang button does is you use it to select multiple steps or multiple notes basically, and you ask them to join your gang. I think that's why it's called gang. So let's select, hold down gang, and then we select these 3 closed hats, and while we still have gang held down, we can move the encoder down here, select these 3 mid toms. So now we've got 6 of those steps selected, and we can move them around all in one go by holding shift and moving the bar left and right. See, these 6 notes are all moving around now. You see, if you move them there, now it's like 2 notes on one step, and it shows you that with the 2 little dots there beside the main dot. You can also move it right into the first bar, and we go to view the bar by letting go of shift, moving the bar encoder. And there, our notes are still there. Move them around. Let's move them back to bar 2. Let go of shift and turn the encoder to C bar 2. You can also move the notes up and down. Hold down shift again, but this time turn the encoder of any of the notes you've selected. So now they're all on different rows. They're going to be playing different notes, or triggering different drums on the analog rhythm in this case. Do the same, move them left and right, up and down. And then if you press gang again, it'll unselect those. So now you don't have anything ganged. So let's press gang again and select just these 3. Hold down shift, move them left and right. Hold the encoder to move them up and down. You can also delete those 3 by pressing delete and then gang. Now we've deleted the gang notes. You can also gang by row. Just say you wanted to select all of these closed hats in this row. Hold down gang, press the row encoder. Now we've selected every closed hat in this bar. Press gang to deselect them. You have 2 options though. When you press gang, you can gang the row by the bar or the whole pattern. So if you move this encoder here, now press this row encoder. Now we've selected every closed hat, not only in this bar, but in all other bars in the pattern. Currently I just have 2. So here they're all selected in the first bar as well. So we can move them around, delete them. We can also go into row, view, and we can change the velocity of all of them at the same time by just turning one of the encoders. We could also change the delay of them all at the same time. See, they're all a bit off there now. And now they're all back on. Press row again to go into the grid view. Press gang again to deselect them all. Another method you can gang notes by is by step. So if you look at step 5 here, I've got a lot of notes on step 5, like the idiot I am. So if you hold down gang and press the encoder over step 5, you've selected every note that's on step 5. So once again, you can move these around by holding shift, moving the bar encoder, move them all left and right. You can also hold down shift and move them up and down the rows like that, and press gang to deselect them again. Or if you want to delete them all, hold down gang, press the encoder to select every note on the step, press delete and gang. Now they're all gone. One other thing to say about the gang method is there's 2 ways to have it set up. Currently I've got it set up so when I press gang, when I gang some stuff like this, I gang these two notes. If I press gang again, it just clears it. The notes are not ganged anymore. However, if we go to track view and go to menu and go to more and go to user config and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's the 6th option down, CK edit, auto gang clear. I've got that on because I like that on. But if we turn it off, I'll show you how it works now. Some people might prefer this method of ganging. Now when it's off, you still gang things the same way. Hold down gang, select your notes. But now if you hit gang again, they're unganged. But if you hit gang again, you're turning the gang on and off, but you haven't cleared it. So there's notes, you can turn the gang on and off. And when they're on, you can move stuff around. And then when it's off, it's just normal like that. But if you want to clear the gang, you hold down gang, press delete. That clears the gang. Now to me that's a bit confusing. I prefer it the other way. So I'm going to go back to track mode. I'm going to go into menu, more, user config, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th one down. CK edit, auto clear gang. I'm going to put that back on. That's the way I like it. But you should have it go the other way. You might prefer it that way as well. I'm going to show you another little trick in the row view. Let's say we have, let's enter just some closed hats for this experiment. We press play, you can hear the closed hats. Now we go into row mode, click on row, and we see the velocity of all the closed hats now. You can change the velocity of each one by moving this encoder, but if you hold down this encoder and hold down this encoder and then move one of them, it well, you can see what happens. It changes the velocity of all of them, but it gets a bit less as it goes up. So you get this kind of pattern with the velocity. It's like a fade. I'm fading out the note there, but you can also, you don't have to select all of the notes. You can do it halfway. Hold this, I'm pushing in the encoder and then I'm turning one of them like that. I turn that one up or turn that one down. So you can make little patterns like this with the velocity. That's a nice little trick. Another shortcut, if you want to create more bars, but you don't necessarily want to copy all the notes into them. In this example, I just have one bar here. If you hold down last and move the encoder, the bar encoder clockwise, you will add more bars. So now I've got 2 bars. Second bar is empty. And now I've added a third one. So we've got 3 bars now. 2 and 3 are empty. As you can see, if I view them. You can also get rid of those by holding down last again and turning the bar encoder anti-clockwise. You'll see now bar 3 has disappeared. So now I've just got 1 and 2. Now if I do it again, hold down last, move it anti-clockwise. Now we're back to just 1 bar. That's pretty handy if you just want a couple of extra empty bars you want to copy and paste some stuff into. But you don't want to use the menu copy and double because you mightn't want to copy this exactly. You might want something completely different. Another little trick is you can change the length of each bar in your pattern. So currently I've got 2 bars. They're both 16 steps long, as is the normal drum loop, I suppose. But if you want to change that, hold down last and you press the step you want it to end on. Currently you can see 16 is flashing, so we've got 16 steps, but let's go 15. Now, it'll only play 15. Each bar will only be 15 steps, and you can see as well in the CK It's only showing up to 15 in the pattern there. Hold down last, press 16. Now it's been extended to 16 again. Another trick you can do in CK pattern mode is to rotate the pattern. You do that by going to menu and selecting first step. And now the step I hit, if I hit number 5, it'll move that to number 1. So let's have a look at pattern 2 I'll show you. It does it for the whole pattern, not just for the bar. So I'm gonna, on bar 1, I'm gonna move 5 to 1, and that will move on bar 2, it'll move 13 down to 9. Hopefully it will. So I'm gonna press 5 to move it to the first step. There, so now those notes are over there. Go to bar 2, yeah, these notes have moved over there. So it's moved the whole pattern, every bar in the pattern up like that. That can be useful sometimes. By default, the CK pattern shows you 16 steps per bar, but you can change that. So let me give you an example. If I play every note, every closed hat here, that's 16 closed hats in one bar. But if I change move the value knob here, now it's showing us 32 steps for one bar, but there's only 16 buttons, so we view the first and second half of the bar by moving the bar encoder. So this is the first half of the bar now, so now we can add more steps to get the 32 steps in. So you can also do this, get it to view 64 steps. So now that's the first, second, third, fourth quarter of the bar. And we can add 64 steps in for each one. I'm not going to play it out. It's a very annoying sound after a while. Let's delete this pattern and create a new one, because I also want to show you the triplets. So if we change this value, we go to 32, go to 64, but then we go to triplets. So 2, 4, 8, 16. So now we want to press play. Gonna add snare. Now it's a triplet, so it's a bit different where you expect the notes to sound good. I'm still figuring this out because I don't work in this time signature a lot. But we're gonna try a song in triplets here. There we go. Okay. So we're seeing the first and second half of the bar there in triplets because there's going to be more steps. But yeah. Now I'm going to show you the bar follow and the bar loop options. So we have 2 bars here in the pattern, but we can just see the first bar at the moment because that's what we have selected. But if you press bar follow, if you press the bar encoder, you'll turn bar follow on. So now we're seeing the second bar. Now we're seeing the first bar. It shows us the one that's playing at the moment, which is useful. Let's turn that off now. I want to focus on bar 2. Sometimes you just want it to loop one bar while you're editing it because you don't want to wait for that bar to start playing. So if you press fill and press bar, now it's just looping the second bar for me. If I had a pattern with 16 bars, I could just loop the 14th bar while I'm editing it, which is very handy, instead of waiting for that bar to play each time, like waiting for it to go around to the 14th bar of your 16 bar pattern. So now we've got a nice little, here we go. Cowbell's always nice. And let's go crazy with a cymbal as well. So now we're still looping. You can see the little two brackets at the start and the end there. That shows that it's currently being looped. If I press fill and bar again, that'll clear the loop. So now it's going to play the first bar. Now it's going to play the second bar. But not only can we loop a bar, we can loop at any point we want. So I can go to bar 1, and what we do is we press fill. And if I want to start from step 10 and bar 1, hold down fill, press the 10 encoder. That sets the loop start. You can see the bracket there. Now let's go to bar 2, and you press last for the loop end, and I'm going to pick 14. That sets the loop end. So I've got my loop start at 10 on bar 1 and my loop end at 15 on bar 2, which sounds quite annoying currently, but can be useful when you want to edit a certain section. Now to clear this loop, there's two ways to clear it. You can use fill and press 10 to clear the start, and then you go last and 14, the step used to clear the end. That's a bit cumbersome though. So what I would do is, let's just add another loop here. To clear this one, I hold down fill and I press I press the bar encoder twice. That uses the bar as a loop, and now that turns it off. So doing that is a lot quicker, I find, to clear a bar loop. So that's bar loop on, bar loop off while I'm pressing fill, hitting the bar. But you want to do loop a different amount of steps that's not a bar. Fill and an encoder sets the start point. Last and pressing the encoder sets the end point. So now I've got 7 to 12. And I clear that by pressing fill and then bar twice. So that's the bar loop. It's quite useful for editing long patterns. You want to edit bar 19 or something in your pattern. It's 24 bars long. Now we're going to look at sequencing synthesizers using the CK pattern. I do this a lot. So let's create a CK pattern. I'm going to show you how to add the notes manually first of all, but I never do it this way, but it's worth knowing how to do. I never add any fixed rows. So if you want to add notes, you press any of the steps and it'll ask you to add a row, and you can pick the note you want, and you don't have to add a label or set it to fix. I never do that for a synth. You just press value and it'll show you the note there, C4, and you can add some steps and it'll play the notes. So that's, and if you want to add more rows, go to menu, add row. You can see there's a star there. We've already added C4, add A3. And you can move the notes around just like when we were doing the drum sequencing. Press shift and move this up. And you'll see it'll move it to the next note. G, A flat, A, B flat, B, so on. And you can gang the notes, move them around, move them left and right as well, just like when we were doing the drums. However, that's quite a cumbersome and slow way of adding notes, and I never add them manually like this, really. So what I do is I have a MIDI keyboard plugged into the Cirklon, and I play the notes in, I record them live. So let's do that now. Delete this pattern. I'm going to create a new CK pattern. So let's go to the record menu. This shows you the recording options for playing in notes. The first button here toggles between recording and quantise recording. So you can have all your notes just recorded as you play them in, or you can have it automatically quantized. I don't usually have them automatically quantized because you can quantize them yourself manually later on. Next we have ready and live. Ready is not recording when I press play. If I play notes now, they won't record. If I switch that to live, then the notes will record. So I usually leave that as on live. Next up, we have M through. Leave this on. If you turn this off, then when you're playing in MIDI notes while it's recording, you won't hear the notes as you play them. But once the bar starts again, it'll play the recorded notes once it gets to the start of the pattern. But while you're playing them, you won't hear them unless you have this on. If you keep this on, it works as you would expect. Next up, we have click. This is this sends a MIDI note, and you can pick where it goes, which of the MIDI ports and which note it is. And you can use that as a metronome. If you hold down Shift and press it, it'll give you the settings there. So I don't normally have that on because I usually have an 808 or another drum machine going. So I play along in time to that. Next up is the filter. This is important, but we're going to come to that in a minute. And then after this, it's forced to scale. We're not going to talk about that in this video at all. That's for another day. And last is loop. This is how many bars we're going to record. So currently it's set to 1. I'm going to set it to 4. So now, once I start playing on the MIDI keyboard, because I've got it set to record the red light on here, it'll start recording as when I start playing. So let's do that now. So we got some notes recorded there. Let me turn off recording now, it's just playing. Now the notes are not quantized. As you can see, they're a bit off because of my terrible playing. So if we want to quantize them, we just go to menu, and right at the top, we have apply quantization. Let me just turn the synths down a little bit. There we go. Apply quantization will quantize everything on the grid. Stop that for a moment. Now, just like with the drum editing, you can do all the same stuff. You can gang and select a chord that's on the step, and you can hold down Shift and use bar to move that left and right, and you can use this encoder above the note to move it up and down. All the same stuff we were doing. Or if I wanted to delete that, I could go delete gang to delete it. So that's a good way to edit notes that you're not 100% happy with. You can also, if you go into row view, you can, let me move to one of the rows that have notes. If we move this from velocity to length, if we go back to the grid view, now we can use the encoders on top of the notes to adjust the length of each note that we have selected. So on this row, we've got 2 notes, so I can change the length of them. If we move up here, I can change the length of these notes as well. And if we go back to row mode, we can go to delay, select that. Now the encoder will move each of the notes off the grid as so. And we can also do that with velocity. But it flicks back. With velocity, it'll flip back to this screen because you can't see the velocity changing on the grid mode. Okay, so we have a pattern recorded. Now let's go back to the record menu, and I want to show you the note filter that I mentioned earlier briefly. If we press this, it shows us a couple of options here. Note control, CC control, aftertouch bend, poly pressure, program change, and there's a star after note, meaning that's what's currently being recorded. So if you move the pitch bend while we're recording, it won't record it because there's no star beside it. But if we want to record the pitch bend, we hit the encoder. Now there's a star beside it. So we go back here and I can now mess with the pitch bend and it'll record it. So let's do that. As you can hear, we got some pitch bend going. So the next thing we're going to have a look at is the event list. And here is where you'll see the notes and any other control, CC or pitch bend or program change will be in here. And it doesn't look very intuitive at the start, but what we're seeing here is the step that we're on. And because we're playing chords, there's going to be a couple of notes on the same step. And you can see the 0 after the step is where on the grid it is. So 0 is exactly on the grid. It's minus would be before and plus would be a bit after. Then we see the note, we see the velocity, and we see the length of the note. And if we scroll down through the events, we're going on to step 2, there's nothing. Step 3, there's nothing. Step 4. Step 5, we see some pitch bend here. And you can see it starts a little bit before the note, -4. And this is the pitch bend value. You can see I was moving it up and down. So as we scroll through the steps, there's the notes again. This is on the second bar, the second out of the 4 bars. Step 2, step 3 is nothing there. Step 4, nothing there. But step 5, more pitch bend. And also more pitch bend. And there's going to be some notes coming up as well. What we can do in the event list is we can change these settings. We can move these around. So we're on step 1 here. And if we want to take this note, D4, we can move that. I'm moving it backwards now off the grid. We can move it forward as well. We can change the note, make it something different. We can change the velocity and we can change the length of the note. And we can change which step it's on. This one moves it to the next step, and this one moves it off the step, off the grid. So that's basically moving it forward and backwards slower, and this is moving it forward and back by 1 step. So what else can we do with the event list? It's handy for fixing things, for fixing wrong notes sometimes, and for adding notes in places and adding CC events and fixing bends and things. That's what I use it for. So I'll give you an example. If we go through the bars here, if I go to bar 3, if I go to step, I want to add a note in step 9, say. So I select step 9, go into the event list, and if I hit insert, it inserts a note for me. Then I can change the note value, change the velocity, the length, etc. And I can change the step it's on. See, it's moving. If I move to step 5, there's other things. There's bends in step 5, so it's showing me them. Move it to step 4, there's nothing else there. Step 2, there's something else. Step 1, there's a couple of other notes, so it'll show me them as well. So I'm going to delete that. You can also, oh, I pressed insert by accident. When you press insert, it'll insert more notes, and you can just delete them by hitting delete. But you can also, if you hold down shift and press insert, you can select what you want to insert. You can insert CC values, bend, aftertouch. So let's insert some CC. So you let go of shift, and now when I hit insert, it'll keep inserting CC values, and each of these I can change, to change the value of the CC. or the CC number and then the value. This is the step it's going to be. And this is if I want it off the grid, that's going to be late. It's going to be early. And if I go right back to -23, it goes on to the previous step, step 8. Now it's late on step 8. And if I go to 0 on step 8, it's going to be right on the grid. So you can insert CCs like that. It's a bit much to do your whole track with the event list, but it's good for going in and fixing things here and there, inserting steps exactly where you want them. But if you want to record CC sweeps and things, there's a much better way to do that. And that's in the CC view, which we will look at now. Right, we have a brand new pattern here to keep things interesting. So, you want to record some sweeps of the filter. Well then, when you're in CK pattern mode, grid view, shift and row goes into CC view. And see at the top it says CC number 0. That's the CC we're affecting. So we're going to change that using the row encoder. Going to go up to 74 because that's the filter on the Nord rack. And now knob A controls the filter. Here we go. So now we're going to record that. Hit record. Now, it's not going to record anything until I start moving the A knob. Also, I want to put bar follow on by pressing the bar encoder so we can see my sweeps. So, you see it recorded some dodgy sweeps. I toggled it on and off with record. So if we want to fix things, hit record. Now, once again, it won't record until I move the A knob. So we wait until it gets to that bit near the end where I missed the sweep. That sounds better. So, shift and row goes back into grid view. If we go into the event list, we will see all my CC moves. And if we want to change them manually, if there's any we don't like, we can edit them in here manually. Or we can go into CC view and just keep recording until we get it right. Now, if you want to quantize your CC messages, it's actually, that's what the P3 patterns are good for. On the P3 patterns, you can have the CC step change on each note precisely, but we're going to talk about P3 patterns another day. Today is just CK patterns. Let's just do another CC record for practice. So let's press shift and the row. We go back into the CC view. We're on CC 74. If you turn the row encoder, we're going to go to a different CC. You can see there's nothing recorded for the other ones yet. So let's go to 33, which is one of the oscillator detunes, the fine tune, I think, on the second oscillator on the Nord rack. Let's play it and see. Yeah. I'm just playing it currently, not recording. But I like that. So I'm going to hit record. Now you notice that it didn't follow it because I didn't have bar follow on. That's something to remember. Press the bar encoder to turn bar follow on and you'll see all my movements there. Once again, if we go back, press shift and row to go to grid view. If we go into the event list, Now, as well, there's more stuff in here now. It's my CC33 for the pitch change, a little bit of the pitch change. We have our notes. We have CC74, which is the filter. So it can start getting quite busy in here when you're recording a lot of things. But it's useful for little fixes. So it is good to know it exists and how to use it. Right, now we're going to talk about track values. So we're going to go into the track view. We see the Nord 2x selected there. We see we've got 4 bars and we're on track number 2. Track number 1 is the analog rhythm giving us the drums. Track number 2 is the Nord 2x. So we're going to press the track button again. This is the track value page. You can add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different track values. So what are track values? Press insert, we select a value. There's two main menus, the Midi CC for selecting Midi CC control and track control, which is a menu of interesting looking things. I'm not going to go through all of these, but let's pick transpose first of all. It's an easy one to explain. Right. As you can hear, we're transposing the pattern we recorded up and down by a semitone. And now it's back to normal. So that's useful when you've recorded your pattern, but you want to move it around a bit to see what notes you prefer, as well as transpose, which just does semitones and it only goes down to -12 and up +12. Let's add a second track value. So we hit the encoder for the second track value, hit insert, hit the value knob, go to track control, and octave is just underexpose, transpose that is. Octave, guess what this does? Yeah, you guessed it. Up and down an octave. So when I'm making full songs on the Cirklon and I'm using scenes, each scene that you have can have a different track value saved to it. So I can have one scene where it's playing this pattern, then my next scene, I can save it like that. So that's handy. It saves me, having to record a whole new pattern when I play all the notes an octave up. I just change the track value here. You can also control CC values with the track values. So let's go to track, hit it again. We've got transpose octaves. So number 3, we're going to go to insert, encoder for value. We're going to select Midi CC this time. We're going to go down to our old friend, 74, the filter. Why did I put the filter all the way down at 74? Should have put that number 1. Or number 2 anyway. And we get to label it, which is handy. We're going to call this V, C, F. Even though it's not voltage controlled because it's digital, but hey, who cares? So there we go. Now we have our filter being controlled by this track value. Now, this encoder is a bit slow though. So what we can do is we can assign the A and B encoders are really fast, non-indented pots. Is that what they're called? Anyway, they're smooth, right? And they're really fast. So if we want to assign this to either one of these, we can assign any of these values to A and B by pressing Shift and the encoder. And maybe you missed that. It says move knob to assign. So let's move B. Now there we have B. we go. The good thing about these track values is they're saved with the instrument. So when in future, now I've got these set up, in future, whenever I select the Nord rack instrument and I go to the track value, it'll show these track values every time. So in future, it'll make it easier for when I want to transpose, change the octave, change the filter, etc., which I find quite handy. The track values are quite interesting, but there's a lot of different ones in there, and that's actually a whole other video. But I'm going to show you one more that's kind of easy to explain quickly, which is the length percentage. Let's assign, we have knob B assigned to VCF, so let's assign knob A. So shift press encoder, there we go. It's scaling the length of the notes. So this is the original, the 100%. And that's right down to 1%. They're much shorter. They're getting longer now. So you can have a bit of fun with that as well. Like I said, the track values, there's a lot of other ones in there. I'll do another video on just the track values in future. I think I've covered most of what the CK patterns can do. There's one thing I left out called ripple mode. Colin is still working on updating that. So once he does get that sorted, I'll talk more about that in the next video. There's also a lot more track values to talk about. Haven't even touched P3 pattern programming yet. There's a lot of stuff in there. So I'll make more videos to try to answer more of Myler Melody's questions, because he has some good ones. Hopefully some of you got something out of this video. And I'll talk to you all again soon. Bye for now.